Look at content, community, go-to-market skills. Within the community you're investing in on LinkedIn, you should be commenting on really like the thought leaders within your IC.
What's up, Cassie?
How's it going? I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to meet you as well. You've been talking a lot on LinkedIn lately about every level of the GTM organization creating content.
Absolutely.
What is this about?
So I think let's start with the status quo where we are right now.
Yep.
So you have your BDR function, you have your AE function. The main part of that role is cold outreach, traditionally through cold emails and through cold calls. The interesting part about that is that neither person on either end of that interaction actually enjoys that interaction at all, right?
Yeah.
And we know from data that the average conversion rate from a BDR source opportunity to close one revenue is actually about 11%. So you have a huge cost center in your BDR function, but you aren't necessarily generating the most possible revenue.
So that's beyond just like low reply rates. BDR is struggling more than ever right now to get people's attention. Even when they do successfully book a meeting, only 11% of those meetings opportunities are actually converted.
Or close one revenue, right? And so a lot of organizations are looking at the number of opportunities booked and thinking, scale the BDR organization, more BDRs means more opportunities. And that's the data that they're showing the board, but they're not necessarily looking at it all the way through, that how many of those BDR sourced opportunities are actually converting into close one revenue. So it seems like there may be an opportunity for some different types of outreach methods. And I know we both believe in content-led growth. So that's what I've been talking about on LinkedIn.
Okay, because this is kind of controversial, because I say to everyone, don't feel like you have to go on LinkedIn and create content. I believe that for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm a case study of someone who's done it well. I've done it for companies. I've obviously done it for myself, been able to start my own business, which is going great. And like 90% of the stuff I've done for my own business has come from people just coming inbound because I built that brand, right? 100%. And I saw that happen at the companies I worked at, Lavender, Vidyard. You build that awareness, people come to you, right? When you say every level of the GTM business needs to be creating content, the immediate objection I have is not everyone can do this.
Right.
So who should be trying this?
Right. So I think the main thing I say is that everyone at every level of the GTM function could be creating content, right? Like, I think as humans, we all have the ability to tell a story. I also think that we are all already content creators, and that's a mindset shift. If you are a BDR and you're sending really personalized cold emails, that's content. If you are making Loom videos, that's content. If you are someone who posts on their personal Instagram, you're a content creator. So I think it starts with a mindset shift. I also think that we should really be zeroing in on the top of the go-to-market function, both to lead by example, so starting with founders, C-suite, VPs, but also those are the folks in the organization who typically have the largest networks within their ICP. They're actually hired for their networks oftentimes within their ICP.
It's true.
So interestingly enough, I think on LinkedIn or the space that we created, we don't see as many of those people posting content. See a lot of ICs, independent contributors, manager level, and from the folks I've talked to at the top, there's some reservation about putting themselves out there in that way.
I do definitely, by the way, agree with that. Because if you're a founding company, right, you don't have a marketing department. You have to be that for yourself. One of the easiest ways to do that is get out on social. And although not as many are doing as they should be, I've definitely seen some success stories of a founder growing their entire company off the back of their brand. My old boss, Will Allred's a good example, right? And now I'm finding myself doing that as well, running a company, and my marketing function is just me creating content, putting videos and content online. I would argue it's harder to prove that that's worth doing for a sales rep than it is a founder, because they can see it, they get it, right? That's why they're doing it. For a go-to-market organization or a sales leader or even a marketing leader, they might struggle to see that as a worthwhile investment of a person's time or a headcount.
So I think it's a long-term play, right? So there's kind of an obsession with SaaS in we need metrics, on a quarterly basis because we have to prove to the board that they invested in us well. And everything is kind of designed to get those quick metrics to turn them around. But I think it's realizing that it's not even a 1-year play, right? It's a 10-year play within whatever organization you're going to be at. So sure, if I'm a sales leader today, start building my brand, I might get 13 engagements, 2 comments. Maybe I fall off at that point because I'm embarrassed. Part of my bet and part of my vision with the go-to-market creator method, which currently founding, is that it's this triple Venn diagram between content, community, and sales and go-to-market strategy. And I think where folks are falling off, or where there's a real need for leadership, is that community piece. Being in some sort of community setting, most likely digital, where other people are cheering you on. And I think, BDRs have that in a lot of organizations. They cheer each other on. There might be a LinkedIn channel on Slack where they can, all quickly like their posts. And I think there's a real need for that in the market for leadership.
I 100% agree. That's a phenomenal idea. Don't do it alone. Share your wins, share your losses, share your learnings, get there quicker.
Yeah.
It's definitely always easier to do anything when you're not on your own. Buddy up, whether that's cold calling, back in the day when people used to cold call from offices, it felt better when you weren't the only one being drugged through the dirt by a prospect,
Yeah, absolutely. And when, I was a BDR for a year and a half, and definitely when you got hung up on, but you're calling with your friends, you got a win and you're calling with your friends, either way, the energy is amazing, because, you'd hang up that phone and be like, just lost that one again. I think that's a need with content creation on LinkedIn as well. And especially for executives who are kind of, they're trained to be a bit more reserved. They might feel that they are at a place in their career where they don't necessarily need community.
I've seen this work in the sense that when I started creating content, I was a sales rep and I started making this content, and I found myself building better relationships with the customers who I was talking to as an account executive, because they were seeing my content when we weren't on the call. It was building a relationship when I wasn't even in the room. For a while, I started getting pipeline from it. People started showing interest, or they became in a buying position where they were looking for something like mine, and I was the first person they thought because they'd been following my content for quite a while. And it wasn't anything groundbreaking. It was mostly just funny videos and those types of things I wanted to make. But I didn't go into it with the purpose of generating a pipeline. I just did it because it was fun. It felt good, and it was a nice way to spend my time, I found, right? That's the issue I think that a lot of people are going to have, is 1, it's hard to measure. 2, it takes a long time and everyone's very impatient. And then 3 is probably a little bit of that last one as well, that takes a long time.
Yeah.
Average SaaS tenure in SaaS is 2 years. Half the workforce turns over 15% of the workforce turns over every single year, in other words. People are already skeptical about investing in certain people. We look at the interview processes. Knowing that you could invest in someone and take this big risk and they could just end up leaving, maybe they build a brand and take that with them. What happens in that situation? What's the danger there, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, first of all, it's recognizing all of us that are in SaaS. I think we hope to be here for a while. We love it. We love the community. We know the space. We're good at it. So I think, again, it's seeing that this personally and also for the company is a long-term play. I completely agree with you. I think those of us who started creating content because we enjoy it, we maybe didn't originally think that it could build pipeline, but this was happening for me as well in my BDR role, that over time it did start to create pipeline. And I want to zero in on this idea that your content shouldn't be pitching, and it also should be a lot of commenting, possibly even more commenting than creating videos. There's this rule within LinkedIn, or kind of this idea within creators of the 5-to-1 ratio, where for every one post you make, you should do 5 comments. And I think, again,
that's low, but
it could be a lot, but I think, again, it's that, if we look at content, community, go-to-market skills, within the community you're investing in on LinkedIn, you should be commenting on really like the thought leaders within your IC. You're not just saying great post, or you're not just saying, love this, Will, but you, as a BDR, subject matter expert in a way, right? You have to memorize case studies. You have to know the pain points of your ICP. You can discuss that at a certain point. And so I think it's finding those leaders, finding those sales leaders, marketing leaders who have over 2,000 followers, who post regularly, and getting into their comments with a value add, expecting nothing in return in the short term, but in the long term, being a name that they recognize, having that relationship where maybe they become a customer and you say, hey, I'd love to shout you out. Maybe you just do a shout out of them, right? So going back to your point, I think recognizing it's a long-term play for companies and for reps. And yeah, there's a risk that the rep might build a brand and take it with them. But in the short term, how much organic content is the company going to get?
That's very true.
And as this method grows and grows, I think folks are going to be hiring in part for people who bring those personal brands to the next step. So over time, the industry will really benefit from this.
Now, let's say we start creating content, say we start making videos, we start sharing those learnings. How can we actually capitalize on return on investment the question every marketing team is going to have. I have some ideas about this. I'd like to hear yours. How can you get the most out of creating content if you start doing it?
So I think, again, it's thinking of your connections on LinkedIn as a community and thinking that with every post you're speaking to that ICP. I think this is kind of the third bucket of that content community sales skills, right? I think most people in the go-to-market function have a certain degree of being able to convert folks from, an interest to, I recommend we take a meeting, right? Like kind of that light touch. So I think one method you can do that is to hit it off with someone in the comments. And we do this all the time, right? When saying, hey, Will, really love your content, going to hit you up in the DMs. I think we have a lot in common.
Yeah.
And typically someone is going to accept that request, and you shouldn't pitch them right away at all, but you can start to build that relationship. They're naturally going to check out your profile, see what you do. And if they do have an interest, they might be like, wow, Cassie, I'm so interested in Rev Partners. I need RevOps as a service. And then you get going, then you have a warm lead that you can convert into a meeting.
I think that's really good. And especially just being out there, creating content, if you do happen to grow a following, then when people get to the point of when they're buyer ready or problem aware even, they're going to think about you first as someone who's worth talking to. You can actually accelerate that a little bit by being a bit more intentional about who's engaging with your content. There are tools out there, great ones, and systems you can use to see who's engaging with your content, what companies are engaging with your content. There are multiple from one company, and you can use that in a similar way as a intent trigger. Then say, okay, wow, this person's getting a lot of value from my content. I talk about the problem I solve a lot because that's a good place to start, I find. If you can try and relate your content to the problem, not your product, that way it's not an ad or self-serving. And then that way you can say, okay, this team has got 5 people on it engaging my content. That's a reason to reach out.
Yeah,
that's a reason to say,
intent.
hey, that's intent right there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people miss that part.
Yeah.
It's not just waiting for people to come, putting content out there and waiting for people to come to you. You can proactively look for low-hanging fruit of people who are now aware of you or your company and still do a thoughtful outreach to them, like you mentioned, but know that they're probably going to be more receptive to it because they're going to recognize you and know of.
And this is why I'm a big advocate for the whole go-to-market function to at least, be trained in this method, be thinking about go-to-market creator method, because I think there's that team aspect, right? Where if I'm a VP of sales and I'm doing this and I see 5 team members of a different team engaging with my content, taking that time to look in Salesforce and say, who owns that account? Which BDR, which AE owns that account right now? Can I just send them a quick Slack to be like, hey, Will, a lot of these people from your account are engaging. It helps everyone, right? It helps everyone to book those meetings. And in SaaS, there's such a team mentality, and having the whole team kind of aware of this, even if they're not the person creating content, they can be on the lookout for those low-hanging fruit.
But that's what we're going to finish on because we're finished up on time here.
Yeah.
But Cassie, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mel. This is a dream come true.
Impromptu. I gave you.
I ran right up
You were
here
here within 30 minutes. That was incredible.
Yeah,
Nicely done.
Move fast, break things.
That's right. Beautiful.